Ardennes, December 17th, 1944, 0530 hours, and Private First Class William Soderman of Company K, 9th Infantry Regiment, 2nd Infantry Division, crouched alone in a frozen foxhole overlooking the road junction near Rocherath, Belgium. His M9A1 bazooka, loaded with an M6A3 rocket, lay beside him in the pre-dawn darkness, a weapon that had evolved dramatically since its unreliable debut in North Africa 2 years earlier, unaware that within hours he would single-handedly destroy 3 German tanks and demonstrate that one determined soldier with a simple tube could stop an entire armoured column using shaped charge technology that German designers had never adequately countered. The frozen Belgian earth had required hours of back-breaking work to excavate even shallow fighting positions, the ground so hard that entrenching tools sparked against rocks while exhausted American infantry prepared hasty defences after being driven back by the massive German offensive launched the previous day. The American development of the bazooka had begun in earnest after Edward Uhl discovered a piece of scrap tubing at Aberdeen Proving Ground in early 1942 that happened to be exactly 60 millimeters in diameter, the same size as the M10-shaped charge grenade developed by Swiss engineer Henry Mohaupt. Lieutenant Uhl had been tasked by Colonel Leslie Skinner with creating a delivery system for the grenade which weighed 3.5 pounds, too heavy to throw effectively and too large for rifle launching. The simple tube launcher with electrical ignition that Uhl and Skinner developed impressed General Gladian Barnes so thoroughly during its first demonstration in May 1942 that he immediately ordered 5,000 units, though the weapon's combat debut in Operation Torch in November 1942 proved disastrous with unreliable rockets and untrained crews. Unknown to Soderman, waiting in the darkness, elements of the 12th SS Panzer Division were advancing toward Rocherath, with Panther tanks from the 12th SS Panzer Regiment, vehicles armed with 75mm KWK, 42 L-70 guns that could destroy any American tank at 1,500 meters. The Panthers advancing through the Ardennes forest represented the evolution of German armor design after encountering Soviet T-34s in 1941, with sloped frontal armor providing effective thickness of 140 millimeters that had proven immune to standard American 75mm guns. Their crews, many of them veterans from Normandy who had survived Allied fighter bombers and artillery, remained confident that American infantry lacked weapons capable of threatening their sophisticated vehicles. The evolution from the failed M1 bazooka to the effective M9A1 that Soderman carried reflected hard-learned combat lessons from Tunisia and Sicily. The original M1's battery-powered ignition system had failed in combat conditions, with moisture and rough handling breaking electrical contacts. The M6 rocket proved temperature-sensitive, burning too quickly in heat and too slowly in cold, sometimes still burning as it left the tube. The improved M9 introduced in October 1943 featured a magneto-ignition system that eliminated batteries, while the M6A3 rocket used new propellants that burned consistently regardless of temperature. Most importantly, the pointed nose of early rockets that deflected off-sloped armor was replaced with a blunt, rounded nose that detonated reliably on impact. Private Soderman heard the distinctive rumble of Maybach engines approaching through the pre-dawn darkness, the sound of German armor that veterans could identify instantly. After a heavy artillery barrage had wounded his assistant gunner and forced him to withdraw, Soderman remained alone at his position. The first Panther emerged from the darkness less than 50 yards away, its commander standing in the cupola scanning for American positions despite the threat of small arms fire. 4 more Panthers followed in column formation along the narrow road, their turrets traversing slowly as they searched for the anti-tank guns they expected to encounter. Soderman waited in the gathering darkness until all 5 Panthers were within point-blank range, understanding that engaging at maximum distance would allow the others to escape or deploy. He stood up completely, exposing himself to the devastating firepower the tanks could bring to bear, and fired his bazooka at the lead Panther. The M6A3 rocket struck the tank's side armor, its shaped charge warhead detonating perfectly. The copper cone inside the warhead collapsed into a superheated jet traveling at 8,000 meters per second, punching through the armor and into the fighting compartment. The Panther burst into flames, its crew attempting to bail out as ammunition began exploding, blocking the narrow road and trapping the column. Before Soderman could reload, the remaining 4 Panthers pressed forward past their burning companion, their commanders desperately searching for the source of the attack. Machine gun fire swept the American positions, while Soderman remained at his post throughout the night under severe artillery, mortar, and machine gun fire. The German tanks withdrew temporarily, unable to locate the lone soldier who had ambushed them, but would return at dawn for another attempt to break through the vital road junction that led to the twin villages of Rocherath Crinkelt. The shaped charge principle that made Soderman's attack possible had been discovered in 1888 by Charles Edward Monroe, who observed that explosive charges with hollow cavities focused their energy into concentrated jets. This Monroe effect had been largely ignored by military designers until Henry Mohaupt attempted to sell the technology to the Americans in 1940. The US Army initially showed little interest until Pearl Harbor changed their perspective on innovative weapons. The key breakthrough was understanding that shaped charges functioned independently of velocity, making armor thickness and slope irrelevant when the warhead detonated properly. Shortly after dawn on December 17th, 5 more German tanks approached Soderman's position. The daring bazookaman had spent the night under constant fire, waiting for the next attack he knew would come. As the Panthers advanced, Soderman ran along a ditch to meet them, then jumped onto the road in full view of the German gunners. His second rocket disabled another Panther, forcing the remaining tanks to withdraw temporarily. The psychological impact on German crews who thought themselves invulnerable behind thick armor was devastating, as they realized a single American soldier could destroy their vehicles. Soderman then engaged a German infantry platoon that was moving up to support the tanks, firing his bazooka at close range and killing at least 3 Germans while wounding several others. By this time, enemy pressure had made Company K's position untenable, and orders came to withdraw to an assembly area. As his unit pulled back, Soderman heard more enemy tanks approaching. Knowing that elements of his company hadn't completed their withdrawal and were vulnerable to armor attack, he rushed from his relatively safe position to meet the threat. Once more, Soderman disabled the lead tank with a single rocket, his last. But before he could reach cover, machine gun fire from the burning Panther ripped into his right shoulder. Unarmed and seriously wounded, he dragged himself along a ditch to American lines and was evacuated. His actions had stopped 10 German tanks with just 4 rockets, an achievement that seemed impossible according to conventional military thinking, but demonstrated the revolutionary impact of shaped charge weapons on armored warfare. The Battle of Arracourt in September 1944 had provided the template for American anti-tank tactics that proved decisive throughout northwest Europe. When the 113th Panzer Brigade attacked Combat Command A of the 4th Armoured Division, concealed bazooka teams created interlocking fields of fire that destroyed Panthers and Tigers at close range. The psychological impact spread through German armoured units as crews became terrified of every potential ambush position. Major Charles Carpenter had mounted 6 bazookas on his L-4 observation aircraft, diving through anti-aircraft fire to attack German tanks from above, destroying several Tigers and Panthers while proving the weapon's versatility. The transformation of the bazooka from failed experiment to war-winning weapon reflected American industrial capability and adaptability. General Electric solved the electrical ignition problems through improved manufacturing techniques, while Hercules Powder Company developed temperature-stable propellants that eliminated the rocket motor failures that plagued early models. Firestone Tire and Rubber Company applied automotive production methods to achieve unprecedented quality control. Production reached 500 units daily by June 1944, ensuring every infantry unit had adequate anti-tank capability. German attempts to counter the bazooka threat proved ineffective despite continuous experimentation. Schürzen's side skirts designed to detonate shaped charges prematurely often fell off during movement and provided minimal protection. Zimmerit anti-magnetic coating was completely useless against bazookas since they didn't use magnetic attachment. Tank crews welded track links, spare wheels, and even concrete to their vehicles in desperate attempts to create standoff distance, but these measures only added weight while the shaped charge jet still penetrated at close range. The fundamental problem was that shaped charge physics made traditional armor protection concepts obsolete. The Wehrmacht's own development of the Panzerschreck after capturing American bazookas in Tunisia demonstrated their recognition of shaped charge effectiveness. The German weapon featured an 88mm warhead compared to the bazooka's 60mm, achieving greater penetration but at the cost of increased weight and a blast shield that made it less suitable for ambush tactics. German doctrine emphasized maintaining distance from potential firing positions, but the terrain of Western Europe made this impossible. Tank crews were ordered to operate buttoned up and never stop near cover, reducing their combat effectiveness dramatically. In the Pacific theater, Marines found that bazookas easily penetrated Japanese Type 97 tanks, but learned to aim for specific components since Japanese armor was so thin that shaped charges often over-penetrated without causing catastrophic damage. The jungle environment created unique challenges with vegetation deflecting rockets, leading to development of clearing techniques where assistant gunners would prepare firing lanes. These experiences demonstrated the bazooka's adaptability to different combat environments and enemy equipment. Soviet forces receiving bazookas through Lend-Lease tested them extensively at Kubinka Proving Grounds, comparing them with their own anti-tank rifles and captured German weapons. The Red Army concluded that shaped charges were superior to kinetic energy weapons, leading to development of the RPG-2 that combined American launching principles with Soviet manufacturing simplicity. Marshal Zhukov ordered collection of all captured anti-tank weapons for the Berlin offensive, where portable shaped charge weapons proved decisive in urban combat. The Siege of Bastogne from December 20th to 27th demonstrated the bazooka's effectiveness in urban warfare as the surrounded 101st Airborne Division faced repeated German armor attacks. Paratroopers engaged tanks from buildings at point-blank range, using the city's architecture to negate German armor advantages. Burning vehicles blocked streets and channeled following tanks into additional kill zones. The urban environment that should have favored attacking armor instead became a death trap, when every window might conceal a bazooka team. Intelligence analysis after the Battle of the Bulge revealed that fear of bazookas had paralyzed German armored operations more than actual losses. Tank crews became reluctant to advance without extensive infantry reconnaissance, slowing operations to a crawl. This defensive mindset eliminated the aggressive maneuver warfare that had made German armor successful in earlier campaigns. Veterans reported that knowing every piece of cover might hide a bazooka team made normal tactical movement impossible. The cost-effectiveness of bazooka production validated the American approach of mass-producing simple weapons rather than complex systems. Each M9A1 launcher cost less than $20 to manufacture, while the rockets cost approximately $15 each. A $20 weapon could destroy a Tiger tank costing 300,000 Reichsmarks, a ratio that no other weapon system could match. This economic efficiency allowed America to equip every infantry unit with anti-tank capability, while Germany struggled to fuel the vehicles they had. Training programs established after the failures in North Africa ensured that by 1944, every American infantryman understood bazooka employment. The key lessons emphasized patience over aggression, waiting for side or rear shots rather than engaging frontal armor. Veterans like Staff Sergeant Vernon McGarity, who destroyed 8 German tanks in France, taught that fieldcraft mattered more than marksmanship. His technique of counting track links to estimate range and allowing for rocket drop became standard doctrine taught at infantry schools. The industrial cooperation that produced effective bazookas demonstrated American manufacturing advantages when properly mobilized. Companies applied mass production techniques perfected in peacetime to military requirements, achieving standardization that allowed field maintenance and modification. Troops created improvised sights and handling improvements that were incorporated into later production models. This responsiveness to user feedback created continuous improvement that German industry, while producing technically superior individual weapons, couldn't match while being bombed and resource-starved. Post-war analysis calculated that bazookas accounted for approximately 21% of all German tanks destroyed by American ground forces, remarkable for such an inexpensive weapon. The ratio was even higher in forests and urban areas where engagement ranges favored shaped charges. German after-action reports consistently emphasized the psychological impact, describing tank crews paralyzed by fear of infantry they couldn't see until rockets were already inbound. This mental defeat often exceeded physical destruction in preventing German armored operations. William Soderman received the Medal of Honor from President Harry Truman on November 1, 1945, for his extraordinary heroism at Rocherath. His citation noted that through unfaltering courage against overwhelming odds, he had contributed greatly to the defense of the vital road junction. Soderman survived his wounds and lived until October 20, 1980, his actions becoming legendary among infantry veterans. 2 Navy ships would be named in his honor, recognizing how one soldier with a 13-pound tube had stopped an entire armored column. The legacy of bazooka employment in World War II fundamentally altered military doctrine worldwide. The principle that infantry could defeat tanks with portable weapons became central to NATO defense planning during the Cold War. Soviet tank design evolved specifically to counter shaped charges through composite armor and reactive systems. Modern anti-tank weapons like the AT-4 and Javelin trace their lineage directly to the simple tube launcher Uhl created from scrap metal in 1942. Field Marshal Model's final assessment before his death in April 1945 admitted that German tank design had failed to anticipate the shaped charge threat, pursuing ever thicker armor that provided no additional protection while adding weight and mechanical complexity. He acknowledged that portable anti-tank weapons had transformed armored warfare more fundamentally than any other innovation, turning tanks from dominant offensive weapons into vulnerable targets requiring constant infantry protection. Though German tanks remained technically superior, that superiority became meaningless when crews were too terrified to advance. The transformation from North Africa to the Ardennes proved that technological surprise could overcome material superiority when properly employed. American soldiers who had fled from German tanks at Kasserine Pass in 1943 were destroying Tigers and Panthers from concealed positions by 1944. The combination of industrial innovation, tactical adaptation, and individual courage like Soderman's created a capability that German forces never successfully countered. Every improvement from the unreliable M1 to the effective M9A1 came from combat experience, with frontline feedback driving manufacturing changes. Combat photographers documented the devastation shaped charges caused to German armor, showing catastrophic internal damage from relatively small entry holes. These images became training materials, demonstrating that the bazooka's effectiveness far exceeded its modest appearance. The visual evidence of burned-out Panthers and Tigers with characteristic bazooka damage proved that American infantry had mastered the art of tank killing with simple mass-produced weapons that cost less than a military radio. The final statistics revealed that over 476,000 bazookas and 15.6 million rockets were produced during World War II, making it the most widely distributed anti-tank system in history. The weapon that began as an experimental tube launcher had evolved into the defining infantry weapon that made every German tank vulnerable. From rifle companies to airborne units, the ubiquitous presence of bazookas meant that German armor faced potential destruction from any direction at any time, creating a tactical nightmare from which they never recovered. Private First Class William Soderman's heroic stand at Rocherath demonstrated that determination and proper weapons could stop any enemy, regardless of their technological advantages. His foxhole became a symbol of how defensive positions could become offensive weapons when combined with revolutionary technology and extraordinary courage. The shaped charge principle that German designers had understood but underestimated had transformed warfare, proving that in combat, physics and human courage could overcome any material advantage. The journey from the failed M1 bazooka in Tunisia to Soderman's Medal of Honor action showed how quickly military innovation could reverse battlefield dynamics when industrial capability, tactical adaptation, and individual heroism combined to change the course of history.